Mike, ironic that we find ourselves within the walls of the Alamo.
It really is, Marty. There's a lot of lessons to be learned from the Alamo.
I mean, essentially 300 settlers who were fighting for independence against a foreign dictator, general dictator, decided to draw the line in the sand here because they decided they weren't going to follow his arbitrary dictates in violation of the Constitution of the land that was here.
Right. Yeah, and it's fascinating that those people, they live on in history because their integrity was more important than their immediate life. And, you know, we read that little quote when we walked in here. You know, Thermopylae had its messenger of defeat. We had none.
Right. Exactly. I mean, look at it. I mean, you got a guy who was a sawed-off man with a Napoleon complex, who was arrogant beyond belief, lavish and ostentatious beyond belief in his tastes and his proclivities. He was ruthless. He was inhumane. And he put out an edict that if you don't back down, I'm going to wipe out everybody. There's no surrender. No prisoners will be taken. And 300 special people somehow bound together and decided, that's it, this is the line in the sand. And it was ultimately a complete massacre, but in the end, it was the rallying cry for the victory that ultimately happened when they took the dictator down. Because of the overreach, because of the ruthlessness, because of the cruelty, went too far, it became the rallying cry that ultimately freed the land.
Right. And ultimately, he lost that which he had lauded over. It was
the ultimate in overreaching.
Exactly.
Overreaching arrogance and cruelty that backfired. I mean, eventually what happened is they drew him way up deep into Texas, and he met his demise at the Battle of San Jacinto, again with overwhelming odds in his favor, with all the latest in Western artillery technology against a ragtag group of people under Houston. And because the guy was such an arrogant sociopath, you know, he was in his big luxurious tent with his grand piano behind, whoring all night long, interestingly with a slave woman by the name of Emily, of all things. And so when Houston and his guys attacked the larger troops in the morning, Santayana couldn't even get his pants on, and they pursued him for 23 miles in his pantaloons across the prairie and found him huddling under a bush, you know, begging for dear life. And of course he lost the entire, ultimately, the rallying cry that began here, and because of the example that people set, ultimately resulted in his country losing a half of its landmass.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's a lot of historical parallels and interest in this scene that happened right here on this spot.
Yeah, where you think you've achieved a victory, but ultimately it was the seed of your ultimate defeat.
Yeah.
Just want to look around?
Yeah.
Sure.
Sure.